for member services and training. My first negotiation actually it explains why I'm not on the video. When I negotiated for this position at the forum, the understanding was that I would be a regular staff member, obviously, but I was able to negotiate that I could work from a distance. So I don't work at the forum offices in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. I work from home, and at the moment, my home is in Cuenca, Ecuador. So that was my negotiation.
Awesome. My name is Melissa Mace. I am the Assistant Vice President of Enrollment over International Admissions at Maryville University in St. Louis. And I was thinking about the different negotiating opportunities I've had, and a couple of them really spring to mind. And I won't say where they were with which organizations, but I've had the opportunity to successfully negotiate titles and salaries, and so I think it makes a big difference if you are able and willing to negotiate. You can come out on the winning side of that negotiation.
Awesome. So now we're turning off our videos. So you'll just be able to see our screens. I wanted to alert you to the chat box. I'm going to type a message here. Hello, people. That is the box where you will be corresponding with us, because you are all muted, because there's so many of you. It would be a cacophony out there if we unmuted you. So please use that chat box when we want some responses from you later on in the presentation. All right, so first off, or if you can't hear or anything like that, use that chat box. So first off, this is the first webinar of the Global Leadership League. So what is the Global Leadership League? We're a volunteer-run organization. We launched last year and just launched our beautiful website last week or the week before. You can read our wonderful mission to ignite change across the global education landscape by empowering, connecting, and training women leaders. So all of you, you may be alone there in your work offices, you know, drinking your coffee in the morning or having your lunch. So, but I would still like you to all raise your hand if you believe that women are and should be treated as potential intellectual equals and social equals to men. Raise your hand if you believe that. So if you have your hand up, congratulations, you agree with the Urban Dictionary's definition of feminism, and that's a great indicator that you should belong to the Global Leadership League. So off we go. The overview of this presentation is here. So we're going to do a quick poll, and this is my first time doing a poll in a GoToWebinar, so I'm hoping I can do it. We're going to do a quick poll of who's on this webinar so we get a feel for how many years in the field we've got here. Natalie's going to take us through the history and the data of women in leadership in the field of international education. Kim's going to walk us through some explanations of negotiation and introduce this wonderful video that we have. And then we're going to actually do some work together on negotiation skills and have some sharing and some next steps. So I'm going to do this show of hands. I'm going to turn on this poll. So launching the poll, you should be able to see it. Please, right there, tap in. How many years have you been in the field, folks? Great. 50% of you have voted. Oh, this is so cool. All right. Okay, so you can see that. Keep going until, I'm going to wait till about 90% have voted, and then I'm going to close that poll. All right. All right, closing the poll. Now I'm going to share it out so you can see who's on the webinar today. So we've got some 40% of our attendees are in the field less than 5 years. We've got a nice 30% 6 to 10 years. That's a great place to be negotiating from. Some of us in the field 11 to 20 years and 8% 20 plus. That's wonderful. So I think what this shows us is that, here, hang on, let me share that poll with you. So can you see that now? I think so. So there's sort of the poll results that you can see. So that's great. So we get to that discussion. We have that nice breadth of experience that we can draw from as we go into some sharing there. All right. So let me hide the poll, get back to my screen. So to start off our conversation here, we want to remind people of the double bind that many of us as women find ourselves in. So what this double bind means is that the traditional traits that get people ahead in leadership, if women show them, we're seen as, aggressive or bitchy, shall we say, and if men portray them, it's assertive and courageous. And yet if we don't portray them, if we don't show those skills, and we have the traditional feminine traits of collaboration or listening, and then we're seen as not having the skills necessary to be a leader. So when we talk about the double bind, and you'll hear a lot about this in sort of the literature around women in negotiation, that's what we're talking about. And so another perspective to have is this sort of not just getting a seat at the table, but women needing more seats in general at the table internationally. So this, it's a little fuzzy as a PDF. In the presentation which you'll receive, it does have the Forbes magazine link. This came out in 2011. And basically it shows that across all these leadership positions, right, whether it's 8% of technology startups are led by women, or only 15% of senior management across all industries are led by women, or if you look about combined across all 8 major religions, women only hold 15% of the leadership roles in clergy. Now, when you know we make just over half of the world's population, you start to wonder what's going on. So that's just some quick data in terms of a perspective sort of internationally of some of what we face.
So let's talk about, this is Natalie, and let's talk about our field, in particular the field of education abroad. And the way that I was able to take a look at where we are in our field was to look at the forum's database of who's in our database. Back in 2011, there were about 2,800 people in the database, and 59% of them were female. I don't think that comes as a surprise. Then we looked at the database again in 2015, and 66% of our colleagues in the field of education abroad are female. So again, that's not a big surprise. And if we go to the next slide, we can look at a preliminary report that the forum issued in 2013. And this really started to dig down into exactly who was doing what. I think it was the first time that they were looking at positions. And what we found in this preliminary report, which is still available on the forum website, is that there was a disconnect between how many women there are in the field and how many men are in leadership positions. So 6-to-1 ratio, male to female in tenured faculty. 43% of men had PhDs as opposed to the females at 16%. But yet women excelled at the assistant position. And fewer females receive salary increases each year. We also found that looking at hourly categories in the field, so people who were paid on an hourly basis versus a salaried basis, women far outnumbered men. Typically, program directors and faculty directors were men as well. So you can look at that report yourself and dig into that. And the forum does plan to do more role for education, experience, time in the field, and all of those things. Just take a moment and think about that. And with a big drum roll, we're going to tell you that the pay gap per year, not cumulative, is almost $10,000 a year. And that just is not right. I know that kind of creates a bee in my bonnet. So I think, it's important data to understand. So when people talk about the pay gap generally in this country or worldwide, we can take it down to our very own field. And again, as I mentioned, the forum is going to continue to do more research to provide benchmarks for the field. And it'll be interesting to see if this widens or narrows. But anyway, that's the data that we have. And we just wanted to give you as a background.
So, what do we do now? If any of you reacted to that figure like I did, your facial expression may look somewhat like our cartoon drawing here. But as much as she's feeling exasperated and overwhelmed, the important thing is that she's asking the question, what do we do now? And that's what we're doing today. So let's move on to the next slide and take a look at what is negotiation. So if you think about the term, a lot of things come to mind, and particularly for a lot of women in the field, we think of negotiation as conflict. But in fact, negotiation is problem solving. It's a dialogue, and the point of a negotiation is to try and craft outcomes that are satisfactory to both parties. So you want to go into a negotiation thinking about your own bottom line, thinking about your own goals, but also thinking about what is satisfactory to the party with which you're negotiating. The aim of a negotiation is compromise, and again, the goal is not to agree, but for each party to feel that they have, in a sense, made a good deal. We're going to dig into this today, but one of the questions for everyone to keep in mind and really think about as we go through this is, where and how do we negotiate in the field of international education? So Natalie has pointed out that the field is full of imbalance when it comes to men and women. Chris showed us what it looks like across many different fields and many different industries, but today we're going to be thinking about ourselves, be thinking about our own leadership journeys, and also to be thinking about where and how we negotiate in international education. And another important question for you all to keep in mind as we dig into your own negotiation skills is to ask yourselves and to really think about creative ways. So is there a creative way for me to engage my counterpart in a way that I'm well off, but so is the person that you're negotiating with? So great things to keep in mind. That's a really solid definition of negotiation that helps us move into the next portion of today's presentation, which is to hear from an expert. So this is a video. The link is on the slide. If for some reason you cannot see or hear the video, please copy that down and watch it with us in a different screen. This is Dr. Margaret Neal.
You've got a job offer, and now you have a choice: negotiate or not. If you decide not to, and your buddy, who got the same offer, negotiates and gets a $7,000 increase, by the end of 30 years, your buddy will be making $100,000 more a year than you. Think about that. My husband's a trained chef. Do you know that chefs don't have recipes for all those sauces? They know the structure of a sauce, and so regardless of the ingredients they have, they can make a great sauce. And that's what I want for you. I'm not going to give you a recipe for a particular negotiation. Rather, what I want to do is give you the structure of a negotiation so that you can be successful regardless of what you face. I want to propose a new way of thinking about negotiation and what you're trying to achieve in that negotiation. And then what I want to do is give you 4 steps to help you be more effective in getting what you want. Folks typically see negotiation as an adversarial process and are uncomfortable because they're concerned that other folks will think of them as too demanding, too greedy, not nice, or socially awkward. What I want to do today is get you to change the frame of how you think about negotiation, moving it from an adversarial process to one that is problem-solving. And problem-solving is collaborative. I want to solve our problem in a way that's good for you, but also gives me more of what it is I want. When we negotiate, most of us view the goal of a negotiation as to get an agreement. This is wrong. The goal of a negotiation is not to get a deal. The goal of a negotiation is to get a good deal. We need to be able to separate what a good deal is from what a bad deal is. So that means we need at least 3 pieces of information. The first thing we need to know is, what is our alternative? What happens to us if this negotiation fails? What are we left with? What's the status quo, or what alternatives exist for us? And the research is very clear. He or she with a better alternative does better. Secondly, we need to know what our reservation price is. What's the point at which we are indifferent between saying yes and invoking our alternative? And when you negotiate, it's critical that you understand where that reservation price is, because that's the point at which you are indifferent, where a no looks as good as a yes. And the third point, which is really important, and one that people often overlook, is that not only do we have to think about our alternative and our reservation price, we also need to think about our aspiration. What is an optimistic assessment of what it is we can achieve in this negotiation? So how do you get more of what you want? Let me suggest that 4 steps will help you. The first step is to assess the situation. Is this a situation where I can have influence on the outcome, to change that outcome in a way that makes me better off? And I need to weigh the potential benefits from negotiating with the potential costs for negotiating. And will the benefits outweigh the costs? The second step is I need to prepare. And there are really 2 aspects of this step. Number 1, I need to understand what my interests are, what I'm really trying to achieve in this negotiation. And the second component is I need to understand the interests and preferences of my counterpart. Many of us may understand what our interests are, but few of us actually understand at a deep level what the preferences and interests are of our counterparts. Third, now comes the ask. Engage with your counterpart. Look at these disputed social situations as opportunities to negotiate. You have information that your counterparts don't have. And this is what you bring to the table. If they knew all your information, if they knew your perspective, they don't need you. Because you have unique information, and because they have unique information, that's where the value is created. Fourth, you need to package. Now, what do I mean by that? Most of us, when we negotiate issue by issue. This is a really bad strategy, because when you negotiate issue by issue, every issue is adversarial. You either win or lose. When you're packaging issues, you now have the opportunity to trade among the issues. So, think about proposing solutions, alternative solutions to your counterpart in packages. And to help you out, because your counterpart will probably want to negotiate issue by issue, think about using if-then language. If I give you this, then I get that. What you're doing is you're yoking various issues together into a package. To get more of what you want, There are 4 steps. Assess, prepare, ask, package. To give you an example, my dean recently sent me an email indicating that I would have to be going from 5 courses a year to 6 courses a year, because he had received information from the provost that we needed to be consistent in the amount of contact hours and course credit. I was not happy about that email. So my response was, I think I need to talk to my dean. Let's negotiate. But before I started the negotiation, I thought hard about why was he doing this? What was in his interest? His interest was probably to make sure the provost was happy. What was my interest? Not to move from 5 classes to 6 classes. So then I went for the ask. I set up a meeting, and part of that meeting was to verify the information that I had gathered in my planning session. And it did turn out to be true. He was interested in making the provost happy. So then came the proposal that packaged our interests. He said he wanted consistency between contact hours and credit. So what he did is he changed the credit to match the contact hours. I suggested, why not change the contact hours to match the credit? Because it turns out that in my courses, in my specialty courses, we always went over. So while they were 3 hours, it was common that we would go for 3.5 to 4 hours. So let's make them 4-hour courses and keep me at 5 rather than move me to 6. He said to me, I never even thought of that. And why didn't he? It wasn't that weird, because he didn't have the information that I had, that my classes routinely ran over. And so when I gave him that information, it created a solution that made him as well off as he was and made me a whole lot better. By the way, I was the only faculty member to get an exception. And why did I get an exception? Because everybody else had the same email. For 2 reasons. 1, I decided to negotiate. And number 2, I provided him with a solution that made us both better off. So what are the unique opportunities and challenges that women face when they negotiate? Let's start off with an example that's pretty far away from what most of us think about as negotiations. In 2006, the U.S. Tennis Open's Grand Slam tournament got some new technology. And for the first time, they were able to replay the calls. And so they allowed the players to challenge the calls of the referees. Now, it turns out that over the course of the entire tournament, about 1/3 of the challenged calls were given to the player. But interestingly, if you divided up the number of challenges by gender, it turns out the men challenged 73 calls, while the women challenged 28. Now, we can come up with all sorts of stories about why men's tennis is different from women's tennis. Men's tennis is faster. Maybe the judges make more mistakes. Maybe the judges are paying more attention to the women. Maybe. But 3 times difference in the number of challenges? Women are simply uncomfortable with asking. Expectations drive behavior. If we expect to do poorly, we will behave in ways that ensure a poor performance. This was demonstrated in a piece of research that I think is very telling. When women were told that people who are like them negotiate poorly, they did significantly worse in their negotiation performance than their male colleagues. When they were told that people like them negotiate well, they did significantly better than their male colleagues. Expectations drive behavior. If you change your expectations, you will change your outcomes. As women, we need to be very cognizant of 3 aspects of negotiation. Why am I asking? How am I asking? And for whom am I asking? Let's first talk about why you are asking. It turns out that women are much more effective in negotiations when they pair their competence with a communal orientation. Women need to demonstrate their concern for the other. So how will my skills help you, the organization, my employer, my team, to do better? So let me give you an example. A colleague of mine had gotten a wonderful job offer from an East Coast university. So she came to me and said, "Can you help me figure out how to leverage this offer? I really don't want to move." I said, "No problem. We can do this." So I said, "Make an appointment with the dean and take the offer with you. Be very clear. Dean, we have a problem. I love Stanford, but I just received this offer. And it's an attractive offer. I need some help. Can you help me figure out how to stay here?" She wasn't making a demand. She wasn't giving an ultimatum. She was saying, "Can you help me?" Communal problem solving. How are you asking? Male evaluators penalize female negotiators in a single issue distributive negotiation when I ask for more money, in ways that they do not penalize her male counterparts. Female evaluators penalize both males and females for asking for more. Why the women were penalized was because they were perceived as being too demanding and not nice. Now note I said a single issue. They were negotiating issue by issue. So, how can I help you with this pool of resources that I need to do my job more effectively to make you better off? And packaging. Communal packaging. Next, for whom are you asking? It turns out that if we distill the research and negotiation, we have two big findings. Number one, you're better off negotiating for yourself if you're a man. Number two, if you're negotiating for me, I am much better off if you are a woman. Women outperform men in representational negotiations between 14 and 23%. This is huge. So I use this all the time. When I negotiate, I don't negotiate for myself. I negotiate for my husband, my 4 dogs, my 7 horses, and my 14 chickens. That's a lot of mouths to feed. And it works. When you're considering negotiating, you need to be very honest with yourself. How much are you willing to pay to avoid the discomfort of negotiating? And if you decide that you're going to negotiate, you need to be strategic in how you ask. And finally, negotiation is an interdependent process. Every bad deal you have gotten, you've agreed to. So you need to have the capacity to say no. And sometimes when you say no, the other side comes back and says, "Don't go. Let's talk. How about this? Is it good for you?" But you'll never know that unless you're willing to walk away. Malcolm Gladwell suggests that you need 10,000 hours of practice to become expert in anything. Negotiation is the same way. You need to practice, but you need to learn from what you experience. You need to see social situations as an opportunity to create value so that you and your counterparts can get more of what you want.
Okay, so now that we have looked at the definition of negotiation, and we've heard from Dr. Mead on negotiation strategies and the 4 steps, we're going to do a quick share out. So we're going to get back to our slideshow here in a second. We'll get out of the video mode and into the slideshow. But I want you all to be thinking now about your successes. So we've learned about negotiation. We know what a successful negotiation looks like. Let's turn it back out to the group now, and I'm going to invite all of you to answer these questions in the chat box. We have a lot of people that are joining us right now, so this should be a fantastic flurry of activity. But we've learned about reasonable arguments and how you can meet some of your hopes in negotiation strategies. And really, this is also about changing expectations, as we heard in the video. If you change your expectations, you can change the outcomes. So we want to hear from all of you. Go ahead, share your thoughts, your stories. What are your successes in negotiation? How have you naturally employed some of these techniques already? And also, what have been your challenges? We heard in the video about women in negotiation in particular, and this kind of comes back again to the double bind in that sometimes when women ask, they are penalized for asking because it's not seen as, you know, something that's nice. So what are your successes, and how have you been successful in negotiations? And for some of you, maybe this is new, so maybe it's not as much about having successes, but having more challenges. So share with us here, and I'll just invite everyone to take a few moments, think about your successes and challenges. I'm not getting feedback from the chat box, so
I'm getting it here. So do you want me to?
Oh, yes. So Chris, what are some of the things you're seeing?
Oh, it's kind of exciting. So one person said they were successful in asking for remote work. So very similar to another example mentioned. Then a challenge, there is a challenge that this person feels like they're, and we're not going to name any names here, folks, okay? So, you know, your secret is safe with us. If you want us to name your name because you're super proud of something, we will. But this person is being put in a box, has voiced interest in different work, more ambitious work, but was kind of ignored. So she has stepped in to do more work that's not her responsibility, but she's not recognized for it. So I think that's a challenge. Someone has struggled to stand up for myself. She still feels like she's being demanding or rude or overly money-centric. I think we all can feel that way, right, when we haven't had it modeled for us. Another person, I don't know if you guys cannot see these questions. I was hoping that with all of us being organizers, we all could have access to this question box. When my boss left and there was no one to take over the role, she held out and did not take that role until she was offered appropriate compensation. She wasn't offered a positional change. Maybe that's a title to recognize it, but she did get compensated. So that feels like a compromise, but something that she tried to package, perhaps. You tell me when. I have quite a few in here.
Yeah, these are great. I'm actually not able to see on my end. I can't see all of the responses. So
here's somebody who had a success, which I think we also wanted to share. When I interview for a new position, I try to focus on my past experiences, professional and personal, and then use that as another leverage point for more vacation time or better salary. So let's see. There's a lot of people just flexible hours after birth of a child was one that's pretty common for a lot of us, right? A lot of the hurdles seem to be, either they're in a company that's not for profit or a university that, you're kind of at the band you're at. So how do you negotiate for a salary or a lack of experience negotiating for salary? Somebody called a male colleague at a former institution to help them out. That's a great idea, leveraging personal networks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's
These are great.
lot.
Maybe maybe pick one more, and then we'll kind of keep going to do our skill drills.
Let's see here. If there was another example. So this is somebody who pitched her new position by writing a description that was in line with their strategic plan, and also showcasing the work that they weren't doing yet, but clearly was critical. And then when the new leadership came, she negotiated a raise for it. So that's a neat idea, right? Aligning what's not getting done with what needs to get done to achieve the strategic plan.
Yeah, it comes back to thinking about the community in addition to just one person.
Yeah, and someone else said that she knew the cost of living adjustment. She did that research in the new city she was moving to and made sure she included that and attached the research.
Great. Thank you all. These are fantastic, personal stories.
I wish you could see them all.
Oh, well, we'll be able to go back in and read through everything too, which is great. But just to kind of recap before we move into the skill drill, things to consider, things to think about is that women find that they are more successful when they're negotiating for other people. We referenced earlier in the presentation a Forbes article. There was another similar article about women and salaries, and it turns out that only 7% of women negotiate their salary. So that is big for not only that year, but it's also huge in the long run because it's a few percentages each year, and that grows over time. But if women negotiate, they are more likely to get a raise. So if you do the research and go in with a strategy and negotiate, you are much more likely to come out with something that you want and that works for everyone. So don't forget in this effort to recognize your own value. And really, we're going to now turn it over to Chris so we can look at how we can apply this in our own lives.
All right, so there is a handout that you should be able to access. If you go over to your panel, there's something called handouts, and it should say that there's one of 5 handouts there. I'm hoping that it's there. It's a PDF called the Global Leadership League Negotiation Handout 2017. So that handout is adapted again from this wonderful Lean-In resource, and I do encourage you to go to that Lean-In website. They do have a lot of great videos there. And basically what we want you to do is choose a topic. So all these challenges and solutions that you've listed in the question chat box are great, and so some of you want to negotiate a salary in your current position, and maybe you haven't asked for that before, or you want to negotiate to get that opportunity that's come open at your university or your organization, or apply for a new one, or get more comp time, work from home, have some flexibility, etc. So write that down on that worksheet, or write it down on a sheet of paper you have, because we're all going to choose one thing, folks, that we are going to negotiate for this year. You're committing to it. All right, so write it down wherever you can. And now we're going to build your case. So these are the 4 steps that Margaret went through in the video of building your case. And I think what might work best, because we already have so many responses in this question and answer boxes, perhaps if you want to have, you all have had such great responses, and I am so hoping or wishing that other people could see them. So these are the 4 steps. So assessing, is this a situation where I can influence the outcome? So a lot of that is really looking at who your counterpart is, right? And can you do anything to influence it? What's in salary? Because like me, you have 2 kids in college at the same time. What was I thinking? Or is it, you know, you want to stay at your institution, but you're bored and you know you're not accessing your best self, right? So aligning those goals. Getting to the ask, a lot of the comments in here are like, oh, I don't know how to do it, or I haven't had practice. And, you know, I think there is that question of what would we do if we weren't afraid, right? Or my favorite quote of this week from Google, 65% of awesome is better than 100% of ordinary. So that means you're not afraid, right? Go for 65% of awesome, and you'll always be better than 100% of ordinary. So, and I think that's where that practicing comes in. I like the you know, ask a female mentor that you have to practice with you, or say, hey, how did you get where you are? Clearly something was working. Practice with me. Help me out. We're here to help each other, right? And like you said, Kim, the packaging is critical. So, you know, okay, if I can't have $10,000 more a year, or $9,960 a year, can I work Fridays from home? Can I have a flex schedule? Can I have more vacation? Whatever else it is that helps you achieve that ultimate goal. So I'm going to go up to some of the questions. So here's a question. When this person had, in her current role, there wasn't a salary that was presented when she took it, and so she just asked for the, you know, she got the minimum, but she wasn't sure how to ask for more without pricing herself out of securing an interview. Anybody have thoughts on that, either here on the panel or out there in the interweb?
This is Melissa. I have a comment around that. So I think before you ever go to the interview, you may not know what the salary is going to be, and sometimes when you're applying for a position, they'll ask you, you know, what's your minimum salary? Try to stay away from even having that conversation until you're at the table in the interview process, because what you want to do is you want to demonstrate to them your value added to the organization, and you also want to see what the value of the organization is to you, whether it's a university or a private organization. Try to stay away from the dollar sign, the negotiating package, until an offer is actually made.
Yeah, and that's echoed in the comments. Like, before you got that interview, don't talk about it. So, so great comment on that. There was another question. There's some questions around. One person offers a suggestion to say if there's a, you know, there's some comments around, oh, I'm uncomfortable with this. This person is uncomfortable, but basically says, look, I don't want to see like I'm all hung up on salary, but it's important for me to ask this question. And that can reduce sort of maybe the level of tension in the air, or perceived tension in the air. I think that's a good idea. Some of the other ones are, if you're already in a position, what do you do? And I think some of our advice would be, you don't have to wait for your annual review to negotiate. You know, you're in your job every day. If you're ready to take on something new or want something, set aside a time to talk to your boss and say, hey, I want to talk to you about something really important. We don't have to feel limited by an annual review in any way about making sure that we're being the best employees and employers that we can be. So
I actually now I can see the questions. Yay! They're pulling up here, and I just thought this is great. We're getting some dialogue between our participants too. Someone asked, what do you do if you can't stay away from mentioning a price range? And the reply was, you know, if you're forced to give a number, then just give a really big range. So somewhere between 20 and 30K, for example, which is a great suggestion.
Yeah, that is a great suggestion. So I think at this point we only have about 10 minutes left. We will get to all these questions afterwards. We'll make sure that we respond to you folks, and we're also going to tell you a way that you can continue to have these conversations. So thank you for all your great questions and ideas.
Well, so we know, based on the comments that we've seen, based on the data that's out there, that women find negotiating a daunting task. But have you ever stopped to think about why? Additionally, have you thought about what shifts might need to take place internally within you to make comfortable and successful negotiation a reality? You know, by the sheer numbers in attendance today, we know this is an important topic. And this webinar, I hope this convincingly laid the groundwork for more intentional work on your part. But how do you get more intentional? Well, certainly, we need to practice. But how do we dive deeper? One option is to join the Global Leadership League and sign up for one of our mentor circles. We will launch the first cycle this spring with the deadline to sign up coming up very quickly, March 1. Now I can hear your inner voice saying, what the heck is a mentor circle? And that's a great question. A mentor circle, also known as a 4x4, is a group of 4 women who over the course of 4 months explore 4 modules around a major topic, such as negotiating. This spring, we are offering 3 4x4 tracks: negotiating, designing a well-lived life, also known as work-life balance, and blazing your career trail. Since the topic of negotiation is why we are all here today, let me lay out the framework for a negotiating mentor circle. After the March 1 deadline, our matchmaker will get to work creating intentional, there's that word again, circles of women around this topic. By March 15th, introductions will be made along with suggestions on communication. Remember, you may very well be in a circle with people far away from you, so how you communicate is going to be incredibly important. On April 1, you will receive your negotiating workbook. Did I forget to mention that homework is involved? Conversations will officially launch on or around the week of April 9th. This is a guided deep dive. We promise not to leave you on your own in the dark, murky waters of negotiating. Let's go to the next slide. So let's say you don't have time for a 4-month commitment. It's just not in the stars for you right now. Consider joining us on April 28th for our next webinar, when we explore the topic of personal brand management and how it can help or hinder negotiations, promotions, and professional reputation. Please note, it will be offered as a member benefit. Watch your inboxes or check the League's website for registration information. I do hope you will join us on April 28th with a brand known as you. I'm going to turn it over now.
Awesome. So we'll see if Cynthia can join us here.
Chris, I wanted to say hello in person so that I could say hello to everybody who came to the webinar today. Can you hear me okay, Chris?
Yeah, I can hear you and see you.
Hey, you guys, that was really fabulous. I think negotiation is such a neat topic, and one of the pieces I like about this is how much of intentionality we have to play in these discussions. And so not only does it take practice, but we need to slow down and come back and really be intentional about how we go about our negotiations. So exciting things. Hey, I wanted to tell you all just a little bit about the Global Leadership League. Thank you for talking about the mentoring circles and the 4x4s in our upcoming webinar. The League is a group of women, just volunteers from the field, who got together and decided that some carved off space for women could be really an empowerment and a place for us to do some training on guidelines or some guides that you may need for your work. We're going to have some great candid conversations. I think women want to be in a place where it's safe to talk, but more importantly that we can ask each other real questions and help each other find real solutions. We're going to do our learning, as you've seen today, with our webinar that we started, as well as some hopefully in-person workshops. And then a lot of time to network and build some connections and some support circles, hopefully at both the regional level and also at the national level. Our focus, as I've said on the bottom of this slide, is that we believe there's great content from outside the field, like the video that we saw today, but we do need to translate that into the field so that we can understand how it plays a role in our international education lives. And obviously a very important part of our work is that it's a global focus. And so the League hopes to serve women from all over the globe and make sure our conversations remain international. We are hoping to put, with a membership organization, we need to do that so that we have some amount of funding that we can bring in outside speakers and put on some of our events. Chris, would you go to the next slide for me and then I'll finish up?
You got it.
Thank you. So the executive team, we have a fabulous group of 10 women who serve on the executive team and about 20 total on our volunteer teams. We set an annual membership of only $65. Our new website allows you to sign up for membership pretty easy, so you just go to globalleadershipleague.com. As soon as you're a member, you have things to access for free, like the 4x4 mentoring, the webinars, and then there'll be some discounts for any of the events that we do in face-to-face. If you've got a group, we'd love to have you join our Founding Circle sponsorship, and you can just email us at info@globalleadershipleague.com. So thank you for letting me say a couple words. I love the webinar today. Thank you all for doing a great job presenting.
Awesome. Thanks, Cynthia. Great to see you. So as a reminder, this is you're going to have access to this. We're going to upload the handout. We'll upload the conversations. Probably, I got to think about that because I don't want to out anybody. So people are like, oh, can we have some of these ideas? I'll have to think deeply about how we give some of the good ideas out and the great questions, but perhaps not put names to them. And also the worksheet. So that will be available on the Global Leadership League website for 7 days after this, and then it's going to be behind the fold, people, because these other fabulous webinars are, you got to be a member to access, because as Cynthia said, we've got to build our membership and really use our resources so that we can all help one another. As a member of the founding board, I love this work, donating my time to do this, so let's all join together in it.
So with that, we'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. Here's our contact information. Feel free to email any one of the four of us if you have a direct question you want to ask us. Our email addresses are there, or our phone numbers. But we've really enjoyed putting together this webinar and interacting with you in the way that we could. And we look forward to seeing all of you out there and about and becoming more involved with the Global Leadership League. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and please complete the survey at the end of this webinar so we know how to do an even better job next time and give you the information and resources that you want. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.